Hi, guys. Welcome to yet another episode of this podcast called Life. And we are here tonight. We have spent some time getting viewers' feedback as to what things it is that they want to have discussed. And one of the hot topics that has came up numerous times is wanting to get some feedback on the entire concept of going 50-50 when you're in a relationship. And so I want to start out, Danny, and get your opinion on it from the male perspective.
Well, I feel like this. First of all, if you're in a relationship, at the beginning of a relationship as a man, most men are going to try to impress a woman by taking her out, showing her a good time, showing her that he can take care of her, or at least that's who she should be pursuing. But it is not fair, I feel, to make somebody pay 100% of everything. Now, should you make your woman pay 50%? Maybe not 50%. I'd even settle for 60-40. She pay 40%, or even 70-30. Let's
Do we
see.
want to start over?
No,
Oh.
just edit. But to say that a man's supposed to pay 100% of a bill or all of the bills, and you just basically collect allowance and sit on your butt all day, like, that's not fair. I mean, especially in today's world. I mean, we're talking about where you got to make three times the rent. So that's first and foremost. And even if you can make three times the rent, then you got groceries, you got gas, you got all the little stuff to add up. And then you expect somebody to take care of you, give you an allowance, pay all the bills, and shower you with gifts. Like, that's just really unrealistic. That's how I feel.
Right. I look at it like this, and I'm like, I feel that it's not right to demand that somebody take care of 100%. My thing is this: if you are meeting somebody or going into a relationship with someone and they are presenting themselves in a manner of saying, hey, like, I want to take care of you, I don't want you to have to pay anything, then if that's what works for y'all, then that's fine. But I think where I run into a problem with it is this idea of there being an expectation. And I've heard too many times where somebody will be in a relationship and the conversation of 50-50 comes up and all arms go up, and it's like, oh no, like, you need to leave that person. And like that's where I have a problem with the idea of 50-50, because at the end of the day, if something were to go wrong in that relationship, where does that leave you if
Right.
you got the other person taking care of everything for you?
Right. And that's how I look at it at the end of the day. If we're getting married, like, and then that's another thing. Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about a sponsorship? Or are we talking about real love and marriage? And if we're talking about real love and marriage, then we're talking about actually trying to grow together and make each other better. But if all we're concerned about is what somebody can offer us, then maybe we should get straight what we want. Maybe you don't want a husband, you don't want a boyfriend, or whatever. Maybe it's just you want a sponsor. And, I'm pretty sure there's guys out there that would sponsor it, but I think it's unfair at the end of the day to project how you feel about men or whoever in that situation and kind of spreading it to everybody else, making everybody else feel like it should be like this. Like, you'll have certain women that'll get on there and they'll be like, oh, well, my man pays all of the bills and he's always did it with no problem and X, Y, and Z. That's cool. That works for you guys, but
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to work for everybody.
Right.
Just like you may have a woman who wants to get out there and work and get her own money, but she may have a husband who doesn't want her to do that for whatever reason. He wants her to stay at home and not have anything. And I don't know, it's balance. Once again, finding some kind of balance in our own individual life. First of all, finding out who we are as individuals,
Right.
so that and getting to know ourselves, to know what we really want,
Mm-hmm.
and not just looking at what everybody else got and thinking that's how it should be.
Right. And I think another area that I kind of tend to think about and go there, and maybe this is a therapist in me, but I also look at the amount of potential for manipulation when you've got only one person being a sole provider, because I feel like that kind of can potentially open the door for the idea of realistically financial abuse if you're
Yeah.
not careful, because people tend to try to control other people with money.
Yep. Yep.
So that's another thing that I kind of think of. And then on the flip side of that is, I have seen scenarios where, okay, the woman is saying, no, I'm not going to pay any bills, but yet I have a job and I'm making either the same amount of money, if not more, than my partner, but I'm still refusing to pay bills. So what are you doing at that point? Like, what are you doing with your money? And at that point, are you just looking out for yourself, or are you at least doing something with it that's still going to benefit the household as a whole?
Yeah, I'll be wondering the same thing, because like, and my thing is, like, let's just say you have a woman who able to keep all of her money, and the man pays for everything, spoils her with everything, so she doesn't really have to spend nothing. But then he loses his job and he's struggling to gain his footing again. Is she going to be there to pick him up, or is she going to figure, you know what, I got enough money, I'm going to up and leave? So it goes back to what I was saying before. Do you want a husband or do you want a sponsor? A wife is going to be there to pick her husband up and make sure that he's straight and have his back. But obviously, women who want sponsors, once the money runs out, then I mean, and he should know, and I think it's only right that you tell somebody that's what it is. That's always my thing. It ain't so much what you do, it's just being truthful about it and getting to understanding. That way the other person knows, so their feelings ain't hurt. And then if they choose to follow and go in and their feelings get hurt, then it kind of, to me, it takes the blame off of you if you go in a situation knowing what it was.
That's true. I think that's a valid point, because I think, you know, there's been so many ups and downs over the years, because if you think about it, 40, 50 plus years ago, yeah, it was common for you to go into a relationship with the idea of, okay, I'm going to stay home, I'm going to take care of the house. And usually the husband goes out and makes the money and takes care of everything financially, and back then, that was a reasonable expectation. And at the same time, because you had the women who were also content and wanted that lifestyle of being able to stay home, be a stay at home mom, stay home, take care of the kids. But I feel like now there's almost this, well, I want to go out here, I want to work, I want to make money, but yet I also still want somebody else to foot all the other bills, so that way my money can stay my money.
Hmm. I mean, like I say, if you're going into a relationship saying that's what it is and you eventually want to get married, then you need to go into it with at least the open mindset of helping out. So even if it's not 50-50, I mean, bring something to the table, make it easy for this
Mhm.
man, because then, you have a lot of men who have a lot of pride and things, and this man may really want to tell you he doesn't want to do this and he needs help, but his pride won't allow it. So then you a widow at a young age because he didn't work himself to death or stressed himself out,
Mm-hmm.
and he couldn't bring himself to say anything,
Right.
and it's just so many different things that go into this whole thing, because I just feel like, once again, it's a recipe for disaster if you're just trying to use somebody ultimately is
Right.
what it sounds like, if you don't want to bring something to the table. And like I say, once again, as a man, as a husband, I'm definitely not saying that, and not because of our relationship, but I just feel like you showed me things early on as a woman that made me want to give you the world. So I think that's the difference. I think you got some women out there that are still out there that have that advantage to show that side of themselves, but I think you got to show it though. you know
Right. But real quick, I want to talk about that, but to kind of follow up to a point that you brought up where you said, well, if that's what you're actually looking for, to be honest up front about it going into a relationship. And so my question for you is, okay, let's, for argument's sake, let's say, okay, I brought that up at the beginning and said, this is what I'm looking for. And as a man, initially, like, yeah, you know what? Okay, we gonna still move forward with this and I can do that. But then what happens if something happens down the line and now you're no longer able to provide that lifestyle? Then is that a situation where it's like, okay, well, she leave you? Or at that point, do you feel like she should maybe reconsider and try to be open to, being able to contribute, even though from the jump she said that wasn't what she was there for?
Wait, I'm trying. It's kind of a long one, so.
So she comes in from the beginning,
Mhm.
says, you know what, I'm looking for a man that can pay all my bills. This is the type of lifestyle I want. And he says, I got you.
Mhm.
So they get married, she living that life, and say 5 years down the road, something happened and he no longer able to support that lifestyle by himself.
Is it cool for her to leave?
Does that at that point make her wrong if she up and leaves?
I mean, once again, if she told him this is what she wanted, and he pretty much agreed to it and said, "Yeah, I got you. I'm gonna take care of you. You ain't got to worry about nothing. I got you. X, Y, and Z." And down the line, like you say, 5 years down the line, he's broke or whatever and can't take care of her, then I mean, he kind of put himself in that situation because he sold her a dream that he may have shouldn't have sold, unless you was just 100% comfortable in your ability to keep doing these things. And then, you got to look at it from the standpoint of when somebody say that, how expensive are they gonna be for you? So can you even afford the monthly payment on 50/50, or women that don't want to do 50/50?
That's fair.
Because I've heard some women say they looking for like $7,500 a month in allowance, and it's kind of crazy. That's
Mm-hmm.
like what, almost 100 grand a year or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It breaks down, but that's nuts. So I mean, once again, I mean, if she says it and he agrees to it, then I mean, me personally, I feel like everybody knew what they was getting into when they first got into it. So it wasn't no secrets, anything. It's the ones that I mean, ultimately, it's really, I mean, it's really nothing else to be said. Now that I think about it, if you both know this is what it is, and you agree to it, and for whatever reason, I mean, you think about it, basketball, sports athletes do it all the time. Really,
Mm-hmm.
because what you had, what was his name? Joe Smith, I believe, for he played for the Warriors last, and his wife, well, she was doing OnlyFans, and on there she was recording him. He had found out, and she was recording on her phone his reaction, and her whole thing was, well, you can't provide the same lifestyle. And mind you, this dude was a first round, or first pick in the first round, probably made decent amount of money, but that was the whole thing. Then there's another guy, Lou Williams, where he talks about being in a relationship and being an athlete, and how you only dealing with this person for maybe 2 days out the week, and you're on the road the rest of the year. So how you deal with them is just giving them a credit card and sending them to the mall, and then when you are at home, y'all spend like this little time together as a family, then you back on the road. So it's almost like, in a sense, the same thing. It's just they can really afford to
Mm-hmm.
rent these women for a little bit longer because they had the money to. But I mean, ultimately, that's kind of what it is. It's like rent a girlfriend. I mean, hey, look out for it. We might see what we can do. Help some of y'all out. You know what I'm saying? Get y'all in some real good unhealthy relationships. I know it sounds backwards, but I'm willing to try anything. Well, not anything, but anything that will help.
Right? Because here's my thing: is you're right. It works until it don't work.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's always the biggest thing is, anything can happen at any time. You talking about basketball players and all of that stuff, and but at the same time, how many of them are basically broke,
Hmm.
when we talk about athletes and all of that. So I think that is still something that needs to be, I think, talked about, I think, throughout the course of the relationship,
Right. Right.
you know, and because, like, and so even though with that being said, what are your thoughts on the women that come and say, well, I won't even date you if you make less than 150K a year?
Um. Once again, to the guys that run into them, you dodge the bullet. You know, for them, I mean, you gotta seem like a pretty short line of men to choose from. Because even when you look at Hollywood and kind of in the sports world, all those same women that are in those circles that can get those men are all kind of being just bounced around. So it's almost like you got to get in where you fit in. But I mean, if you think somebody making 70K or only 100K a year is peanuts, then you tripping. How much are you making? What are you bringing to the table? Really, first of all, before we even talk about what somebody else is making, what are you making? Let's talk about that first. You can't be broke telling somebody else what they should be doing. I don't care, man, woman, don't matter. If you're broke and you don't got your stuff together, the last thing you should be doing is telling somebody else. You should be focusing on yourself and getting yourself together and being able to take care of yourself in case that's what it comes down to.
That's true. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact of it going both ways, because I feel like the men, I don't feel, seem to be as vocal about it. But when you look at certain situations, it's definitely the same thing where you do have a lot of men out there that are perfectly content with being able to just sit at home, be taken care of by a woman, which I now don't get me wrong, because I feel like in the right circumstances, there's nothing wrong with that, because if he's still bringing things to the table, bringing things to the household in other ways, even if it's not financial, there ain't nothing wrong with it. But I think where it becomes problematic when you talk about the ones who literally sit at home in front of the TV playing video games
Right.
all day and, with no other kind of responsibilities, not doing anything, that's when it becomes a problem.
Right. Right. And see, like, as a man, I don't see how you could do that. Sit around and allow a woman to take care of you and not have some kind of hustle. You know, once again, you got to have some kind of morals and integrity about yourself. And and everybody wasn't blessed either to see to have a man raise them, to be taught right. So and I think that's like the biggest thing right there is what you see is like taught behavior. And then now that we got social media and everybody can get on there. So if you're taught this negative behavior, you're way on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, and but we get on social media and we can kind of, oh, you
Mm-hmm.
know what, this person thinks like me or whatever. So then now you got this big old movement of women that think alike. That's
Mm-hmm.
all I'm saying this. And once again, it's just you know poorly taught behavior. It's greedy, it's selfish. It's a lot of other things that people don't even bring up. But like, let's just start there. Like, I mean, to me, that's just first and foremost. And money's the root of all evil.
Mm-hmm.
We can't live without it, of course. But like I always say, if you don't put it in its place, then it'll definitely run you.
Right. And then I think too that actually goes back and opens up a whole nother can of worms when we talk about like family cycles, because how many of these women who are out here saying this and talking about that that's what they believe in, how many of them were raised by single parents themselves, and what were the messages that they were getting growing up as
Right.
to, what a relationship should look like. Because like you said, a lot of times when you look at the bigger picture, a lot of times they didn't have those positive relationships around them as role models. So they're going off of, whatever they're seeing in the household, as well as what's being depicted on TV and in movies, which is a whole nother thing that I feel like, especially within our communities, and we look at the movies that are put out there for us, even in the movies, there are very few movies that actually show a solid, stable, healthy relationship,
Right. Right.
without some kind of dysfunction. And, unfortunately, a lot of times these are the movies and stuff that these young, men and women are watching. And so therefore that's the next best thing if they don't have it at home, of like, okay, well, this is what relationships are supposed to look like.
Right. And see, I also feel like I'm glad you brought that up too with the whole movie thing, because like with the music also, I feel like the music plays a big role, because we had the "We Don't Love Them 304s" era. B is a B, like, all the disrespectful stuff. So I think women have been disrespected for so long. And then I feel like the mentality that we had against women, they starting to have against us.
Mm-hmm.
It's starting to flip almost. And the fact that, they'll jump from dude to dude, and it's just like, almost like it was vice versa, but it's crazy, but just shows how much of an influence music and entertainment and these things have on us,
Mhm.
and the once again importance of uh our own mental health and well-being, and trying to, once again, like I always say, figure out who we are. I
Mhm.
think a lot of times we just have an idea, but we really don't know who we are until we tap into ourselves. I always like to say you got to look at the negative stuff that you wish you could change about yourself, as far as, personality and things of that, and the positive things that you possess, and try to focus on the positive and not so much the negative, because the if you as you're focusing on the positive, is going to help fix the negative, because whatever that negative is, the more of the positive you're doing is going to slowly start dropping off. You know what I mean? But and with that is going to come the changing of the mind.
Mhm.
You start looking at things different, and the most important thing is trying to see things from the other side, you know
Mhm.
and that goes back to what I was saying, so as a woman that may be out there with a man that's taking care of you, and he's paying all the bills, and he's doing all of these things with no problem, you should take the time and ask yourself, when was the last time he may have took a break, or you done something for him, or tried to help out, or has it always just been him doing everything and you just sitting back with your feet up? And think about trying to change that and trying to help out, even if it's just a little bit.
Mhm.
Anything helps, the small things that matter.
Right. And circling back around to what you said, is because I do feel like that it's important to focus on your strengths and focus on the positives, because that lays a foundation to build on. But I also believe that it's still important to actually still understand and have insight into the negative, because one of the things that I see a lot in therapy is a lot of people will come in and it's like, well, like, okay, I'm recognizing these behaviors in myself and I know I need to change them. I want to change them. I try to change them. It's not working and I don't know why. And so a lot of times that creates a scenario where we'll end up having to go all the way back and start to look at those early stages. And once you can start to understand how things early in your life had an impact on you, and then are able to see how it's now affecting you as an adult, I feel like that can produce even deeper change
Hmm.
versus looking at it from just strictly the surface level, which I feel like sometimes is what people are looking to do, because people look at it as it's a quick fix, or I don't have to go into all these things that I've been trying to ignore and not deal with for years upon years. But that's not how long lasting change works. You can make temporary change by focusing on the here and now,
Hmm.
but I feel like long lasting change has to come from gaining insight into your past.
Right, right, right. Like I say, learning from past issues or things that you've gone through. And I know I've done that, where I've been kind of in meditation mode, and I'll be thinking about, childhood, or when I was a teenager, whatever, young adult, and it'll be something that either somebody said or something that I went through, experience, that at that time I didn't think about it. It didn't make sense, whatever. And then now that I've kind of opened my mind up and learned more, and then I look back at certain experiences and things like that, it's like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. It's almost like a puzzle,
Mm,
like you just putting the pieces together.
mhm.
But yeah, you right about that though.
Right. That's why, like I said, people come in and, have one or two sessions and it's like, okay, like why am I done? But it don't work that way.
Right, right.
you know. So, all right.
Just
So tonight we have a long conversation talking about, the idea of going 50-50 in a relationship and when it becomes problematic, as well as the idea of expectations going into it. And so, as we're wrapping up here tonight, I'd like to get your guys' feedback on whether you feel like it's appropriate to expect one person to cover all the bills, especially if the other person is also working. Also, want some feedback on what's your expectations of who's responsible for what. What do you feel like you bring to the table in your guys' relationships? Looking for that feedback. Um, and we'll talk to you guys during the next episode.